The technology used within our automation servers and controllers has advanced tremendously over the last few years. We're close to a completely IP solution in terms of our enterprise level all the way down to our field level. And this basically drives some of the pricing of our products down as they become more and more commodity. This then shows and reflects on our total project delivery when it comes to engineering. And thus over the last 6 months to a year, there's been a tremendous amount of focus on engineering efficiency. We've had now for a couple of releases and before we had something called the Project Configuration Server, and that has now been developed into something called a Project Configuration Tool, and accompanying this will be other tools to improve the engineering efficiency on our projects as this becomes the major part of our delivery when you're doing a BMS solution. The following video is just a brief insight into what we call the PCT and how it will link into the other engineering tools that are coming, which we believe will have a massive impact in your overall delivery of a project solution and make you far more efficient, untie some of your resources to be able to do more, but also to be more competitive.
We have for some time, I think it was since release 1.4 or 1.5, had a product called a Project Configuration Server, which allowed people to accomplish their engineering offline. So you didn't physically have to have the automation servers and the enterprise server to do it. We ran into some scaling difficulties with that because it only allowed up to about 60 some automation servers, but the enterprise server supported a whole lot more. Plus, it always seemed to lag behind the new feature sets that we were putting into the automation servers because you'd have to program it and configure the automation servers to have this capability, and then you'd have to put it in the Project Configuration Server. So we suddenly snapped at the idea, why not create a tool that uses the simulated version of the automation server that we've always used in-house to do our testing on. So that became the Project Configuration Tool, which basically consists of a client that lets you make projects and then installs them on the server, and you're running a virtual box. So it's a virtual machine, and you can configure the same number of automation servers underneath an enterprise server as you can in the real world. So that's essentially what it is. You have, when you create an automation server and you start it, it starts up in simulated mode. It looks exactly like the automation server that you have in the field. The communication plugins are not running because there's nothing to communicate to. VirtualBox environment is designed in such a way that you don't need to worry about these simulated servers suddenly going out and trying to talk across your network to something that's actually there. Some functionality is by default turned off, but lets you turn it on, like the programs. The programs don't actually run unless you say, I want them to run, so that you could then sort of simulate how the programs are running as well. This gives us the advantage that when the developers provide new features into the automation servers, they're automatically in the simulated automation server as well. So we get both the scalability, faster to market, and really a pleasant environment. If I had to come up with a drawback, it's that you need a beefy machine if you're going to run a lot of projects at the same time. Each automation server that's running consumes about 200 to 225 mega memory. So you need some horsepower. Okay. But it's all on the spec sheet. You can get the spec sheet from Exchange. It lists the recommended sizes of hardware. Yes, there is. The Project Configuration Tool can be the target for the automated engineering tool, so that you could then have the AET do a lot of your design work and things like that, and create your templates within the AET, tell it to go deploy to this project that I have within the PCT, and then you can add additional things within PCT that you might need to have. Some other graphics, some confirmation of your inter-automation server activities, and that type of thing. So yeah, there's a close intertwining to that. And We have a big push on for engineering efficiency and improved engineering capabilities, and so there's a lot of communication that goes on all the time between myself with product management responsibility for the PCT and Brad Stratman, who's working directly on a lot of the engineering efficiency stuff from a product management perspective. Well, we'll always, of course, as I said, with the functions in terms of new capabilities of EcoStruxure building operation kind of come along for free into the PCT. Our sense in terms of where we would like to go is to probably move this and some of the other engineering efficiencies that we have to the cloud. It is as I said, it's a very hardware intensive type environment. There are perhaps many offices that might appreciate only using the hardware and the power when they need it, which is the perfect example for the cloud. So that's kind of the direction we're moving in now. Well, as I said, there's a lot of description of it, specification sheets on Exchange, so that's your first place to go. And always using the community site. Community site is a great place if you start to stumble. If you want some insight before you get started, you can just ask open-ended questions of, what are people's opinion of this, and they'll give it to you honestly.